Hello, everybody. Welcome to my presentation on invisible disability, and my name's Alyssa. What is invisible disability? Invisible disability are disabilities that are not visible, like diabetes, arthritis, and Crohn's disease. People with a hidden disability can face many problems when it comes to inclusion, the main being that people are so quick to judge based off looks. It is important for us to make sure that everyone feels included in society, and you shouldn't be judged based on whether you look like you have a disability or not. Perspective and inclusion. For this project, I wanted to get in the shoes of someone with a hidden disability and get a full understanding of what their day-to-day life is like. And I also decided to get in the perspective of a family that helps care for those with a hidden disability. When looking at inclusion, I wanted to highlight some important aspects of society and see if they are accessible or not. Healthcare, technology, and just being a part of a community are some of the things I looked further into. I believe that if we can find the flaws in society that prevent inclusion, then it will be easier for us to accommodate in the future. Who I interviewed. For this interview, I decided to choose my Nana and my mom. I chose my Nana, who is basically like my grandma, because she has a hidden disability like diabetes, fibromyalgia, and arthritis. Now, my mom, she does not have a disability, but I also wanted to include her perspective. Since she is always around my Nana, she might point some things out that my Nana may have not noticed. At first, I also wanted to include my grandpa for interviewing, but unfortunately, he did not have the time. Here on the side are some messages that I sent to confirm our interview. What I researched before. The first thing I wanted to look at was more about fibromyalgia. I did not know much about this chronic disorder, so it was very important for me to get more information on it if I was going to interview her. From my research, I learned that this is pain that shoots throughout the body at random times. So I decided it was important for me to make sure I get information about my Nana about what she might experience from this and how it impacts her day to day. The next thing I researched was other people's perspective with a hidden disability. This was an important step into coming up with questions for the interview. I wanted to see if maybe she had a relatable experience with them. Knowing if these experiences are the same will really help point out the flaws that some may not have noticed or think actually cause some harm. For this information, I did get this from two different sources. The last thing I researched was about family relationships with a disabled member. Since my mom spends the most time with my Nana, she may not be her caretaker, but I do know she knows a lot what she goes through throughout the day. So it was very important to get this. Evidence. Now here are my first page of notes from the interview, and my handwriting is a little bit messy because I was trying to write down everything quick, so I will explain this in a summary on a different slide. And here is the second page. A short summary of my notes. In this interview, my Nana basically explained that she often feels weak if her sugar starts dropping. She used to experience pain in her hands and in her legs when she walks for very long. When she leaves, she makes sure she packs snacks and she uses her cell phone throughout the day to track her sugar. And she does not notice any negative things, but did point out some things, like how there is very limited handicap parkings at some spots, and she feels like having benches more available in stores will help her when she starts feeling pain in her legs when walking. For my mom, she just reminds her to check her sugar and to make sure she is eating throughout the day. Something she notices is that sometimes people will give my Nana a funny look if she starts eating out of nowhere because they don't understand that her sugar is dropping. What I learned about inclusion. I learned that even though there are not many people with a hidden disability, and that they all might not experience the same negativity, it does not mean that they are fully included in society. like the fact that some stores might not have anywhere for those who experience pain while walking to sit down, and this can even help out elderly or other people just to regather themselves. And how it connects. When I look back at the UDL guidelines, I remember when it talked about having the knowledge and emotional capability when thinking about disabilities. I believe that this should be applied when creating layout of stores or just places in general. People are so quick to judge, which makes inclusion more difficult because they don't try understanding the person. They just look at them for who they are and try, and they don't understand that this person may be going through something, whether it be a disability or not. I learned that for parking, not to judge a place if it has that has a lot of parking. When I was growing up, I used to think all the close parking was only handicap, and that there was just so many. But now I learned that there's so many different disabilities that can make someone use those handicap spots. When I compare how many handicap parking there is versus those that aren't, it's a big difference, especially for those small places that may have only one or two handicap spots. This means that someone who's handicapped and needs that spot has to park farther away, especially if those things are taken, because these places only have one or two. And the issue for that, I don't really know. Maybe the small stores may not have the funding for it. I also learned that family helps a disabled family member feel normal by not treating them any different. How it relates? When thinking about Carly's experience with parking in a handicap and my nana's, it made me realize that some people do not see those with a hidden disability equally. So when you actually see someone with a disability, like someone being in a wheelchair, when it comes to when coming up with the idea of how many handicap parking should be put in a parking lot, people should also include the number of those that could be with a hidden disability. And remember that whenever they are being placed near stores. Access. What I learned. I learned that those with disabilities have trouble affording medical stuff or things that they need to live. The fact that when it was Easter and after the interview, my nana ended up bringing us something up. She brought up the fact that my grandpa is scared to retire even though he's at retirement age because they have to pay out of pocket for her medication. And that makes me feel very sad because no one should have to struggle or worry financially if they can't afford medication, and then what basically helps them to live. The fact that their insurance doesn't cover this is pretty crazy to me because without this medication, she has a risk of death. And society's system with medication and people who need it should be very different. When I think of this, I also think of the fact of how many others may be affected by this, and I want to know what can we do for that. When I look back at the class, one thing that sticks out to me would always be the discussions of the what would we do for this medical issue. It makes me wonder what the other students would do in this with this issue. I know that it'd be hard to make a change as a normal citizen, but I wonder if more people start looking at the struggles of those close to retirement age and with disability, if maybe we can notice that more people are struggling. In this class, we usually talk about what can be changed in society, and I think this is one problem that just needs to be fixed first, because it doesn't just affect those with a hidden disability. This can affect anybody, whether it be with a disability or not, or just someone who is sick. Questions I have now. Something I would like to know is how can we help those who are struggling to afford medication? Can we try maybe making a program? Another question is how can we have an equal parking or equal space of parking, especially as small businesses? In this picture, we see just two handicap parkings, versus this kind of big lot of just regular parking. And the last question is how can we teach more people about invisible disability? I feel like a lot of people don't really think about those with a hidden disability and just think about people who are in a wheelchair or could be blind. So, how can we share this information more for others to know? And here are my resources. And thank you for your time. Hope you enjoyed my presentation.